And I would like to introduce our next speaker tonight, Brent Sherwood. I think he is the one who traveled the farthest tonight. He is a space architect from the Los Angeles area, manager of strategic planning and project formulation at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And I think we will come in a step closer to what the realities of thinking and planning with and for outer space are. And I just want to point out his latest publication. He has published widely and extensively on the issues of space, architecture, and design. And his latest book is Out of This World, The New Field of Space Architecture.
There we go. Good evening. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. As someone mentioned earlier, I did come a long way. I'll try not to fall asleep in the middle of my own remark. You know how it is when you fly. So I have very brief comments tonight, but the intention is to provoke you at a high level to think a little bit about what it would be like to do architecture in space and for what purposes. So first, I'd like to provide some context about the likely and possible directions that human spaceflight could go. As you probably know, in 2004, the United States announced what was to be its future in human spaceflight, to go to the surface of the moon again, to restore that capability and do more elaborate exploration on the surface, and then to use that as a proving ground for going on to do human missions to the surface of Mars. You may also know that since then we have a new president, and therefore we have a new NASA administrator, and therefore the plans are being reset. That happens in the US every 4 years or every 8 years. And so as we speak, in fact it's daytime over there, so as we speak, NASA is engaged in trying to figure out what missions it should turn its attention to beyond space station. And it is not concluded that that will be to the surface of the moon. There are other potential destinations. So I'll talk briefly about what some of the possibilities might have been and still could be in the world of human spaceflight, and where we may see things go from a NASA investment standpoint. There are really three directions that human spaceflight could take. The first is what I'll call the von Braun blueprint. This was laid out by von Braun in Das Projekt in the 50s, and then reiterated and updated by him in the early 70s. And fundamentally, it was a three-step plan to begin with a capability to have a reusable transportation system to get from Earth to orbit and back, which he called a shuttle, a reusable shuttle. Then using that to build a permanently occupied space station in Earth orbit, and then use that as a development platform and possibly a transportation location to launch human missions to Mars. So on this list, I've checkmarked the first two of those because in one form or another, we have done those. We have a shuttle and we have a permanent space station. You'll notice that part of von Braun's blueprint was not to go to the surface of the moon. The Apollo program, which was noted earlier was a child of the Cold War, was actually a detour on von Braun's plan. And it is therefore no surprise to realize that, or to have witnessed the demise of the Apollo program and the cessation, the stopping of human missions to the moon. It was never part of the blueprint. Humans on Mars is quite a challenge. It's still quite far in our future because of the enormously high level of capability required and risks, distances, costs, and technologies involved. So that one doesn't have a check mark. It's still open. And we can see that if we generalize history, Apollo, and the von Braun blueprint, I would call this option for human spaceflight humans to planets. So I've shown here 3 potential destinations, and you'll be hearing more about this in discussions and seeing it in the literature over the next few years. The first are near-Earth objects. There are thousands of asteroids and spent comets that are in orbits that cross Earth's orbit. Some of them in the future potentially could be hazardous to our health on Earth. The dinosaurs can testify to that. And because there are thousands of them and they're diverse and they're reachable by human spaceflight, they provide a diverse universe of objects to explore. They've never been part of NASA's planning for human spaceflight, but they may be becoming part of NASA's plans. And then there is the Moon and Mars, of course. So this is what I call humans to planets. Humans, a few humans on long missions, reaching out, touching other worlds, and doing in some fashion what it is that we are familiar with from Apollo. But there are other options. Another is to use government resources, government money, to accelerate development of commercial space travel as an industry. So I'm sure some of you have paid attention to the creation of the space tourism market, passenger travel. At the beginning, these are suborbital missions. They're short hops into space, which is much, much easier than flying into orbit. It requires much less energy going up and coming down. But that's how it begins. And there is certainly a belief on the part of the entrepreneurial companies and their fans, which would include me, that there is a market there. I believe there will be such a market for passenger travel in Earth orbit as well. I believe that coupling the ride of your life with the experience of weightlessness for extended periods of time and all the fun and challenge that that provides, and the view out the window, which is the most meaningful and beautiful and ever-changing view in the solar system, together comprise an experience which is marketable. So I think it is inevitable that that industry will develop. And many of us in this room will have an opportunity in the future to participate in that as passengers. But there are enormous risks and costs involved in developing orbital passenger travel, and governments, which are spacefaring nations, could choose to invest in accelerating the creation of that industry. The end result would be, rather than 6 government employees walking on the surface of Mars someday, would be hundreds of thousands of ordinary people traveling in Earth orbit every year. The third potential direction is the development of a commercial space resource industry, and primary among those is space power. Solar power collected in space at large scale, converted to microwaves or lasers and beamed down to the surface of the Earth to provide electrical energy for our future. This is also a very large-scale project, would require most likely the participation of multiple nations. Japan is actually in the lead of this right now, and again would provide the opportunity for many people to fly in Earth orbit. So 2 of these, space travel, passenger travel, and space power, are primarily focused in near-Earth space and are related very closely to the surface of the Earth and our terrestrial economy and civilization. The middle one, humans to planets, is the traditional one to think about space exploration. And it's pretty clear that NASA itself will follow that middle path, humans to planets. It's been directed to do so since its origin, and most likely it will continue in some fashion on that path. What's common to all 3 of these potential futures for human spaceflight is the advancement of this new field of space architecture.